really, I think marketers kind of unjustly get labeled as like the coloring department or the creative department that aren't really sure what they're doing, in part because they just look at advertising and aren't allowed to sort of expand their scope into other areas. And I think what marketing, and when you hear things like, marketing is everyone's business, everybody's job in the company is marketing, it's because of the four P's. And I think it's important for all of us really to kind of look at those four P's because they're still really, really good.
Welcome to What Gets Measured, a NinjaCat podcast about marketing, performance management, metrics, and effectiveness. Because what gets measured gets managed. I'm your host, Jake Sanders. Marc Binkley is the VP of Strategy and Digital Marketing at Anstis Communications, where, among many other functions, he's the host of their excellent podcast, Acast, in which he interviews some of the most innovative and informative minds in marketing today. With a focus on digital marketing and diverse experience from the boardroom to the whiteboard, from products to services, he's a Section 4 certified brand strategist. He's packing both a real MBA and a mini MBA from Mark Ritson, and today he's joined us for a chat about the 4 Ps. Mark, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's awesome. Thanks for inviting me on this.
Give us your elevator pitch, for you. Who's Marc Binkley?
Well, I would say really I'm a marketer is how I identify myself, but I spent half my career in sales and half in marketing, doing the cold call thing, working 100% commission, and just through that experience found lead gen as a way to find clients and prospects and let them find me. And then through that got really interested in marketing itself. And at the time it was the sort of early years of digital marketing, and kind of for me it was really fascinating getting involved. I wanted to be on the ground floor or something. So jumped in with 2 feet, and 10 years later ish, here I am.
You've written extensively, on LinkedIn about the 4 Ps: product, price, placement, and promotion. They're long-standing foundational frameworks. So these basics, I mean, some people don't really get the basics. They're still relevant. How has the marketing mix model evolved in your mind, to serve today's marketers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's a couple takes on that. I'll just spitball a few ideas that are in my brain, and then feel free to ask anything else that
For
may or
sure.
may not make sense. But I think what marketing is devolved to is really just this small m of marketing, which is really looking at marketing just through the promotional lens. And so really, I think marketers kind of unjustly get labeled as like the coloring department or the creative department that aren't really sure what they're doing, in part because they just look at advertising and aren't allowed to sort of expand their scope into other areas. And I think what marketing, and when you hear things like, marketing is everyone's business, everybody's job in the company is marketing, it's because of the 4 Ps. And I think it's important for all of us really to kind of look at those 4 Ps because they're still really, really good. Price is super important. Everyone talks about differentiation and not being a commodity and that kind of stuff. And so the price elasticity is a really important factor that marketers can look at when they're building brands. And that's, I think, one of the key measures of that. Price is important. Promotion is obviously a component of it, but the product itself is really important. Especially in the service industry where you can change your service without actually physically having to change a production line or anything like that. And to keep it relevant and sort of up to date with the needs of today's customers. And then place is really important, obviously. I mean, the disruption in supply chain lately has really been prevalent for a lot of people. I just heard McDonald's is having to, in Japan, ration their French fries because they can't get potatoes out of North America. So, product aside, I mean, it's great to have product, but then distribution is a really important piece of the whole puzzle.
Well, and I think you've mentioned how digital marketers have sort of adapted and maybe sort of disintermediated these literal functions of, shelving, and that's sort of a search engine function is sort of
Mhm.
merchandising. Do do maybe could you speak to digital marketers speaking about placement more in a digital
Mhm.
fashion? Because you know, share of search, this kind of stuff. What's your thoughts on that P in specific for
Mhm.
digital marketing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, in a traditional, let me start with a traditional sense. Like, if you think about a retail outlet, and that a store in a mall is a place where you distribute your products from. Um, the store itself has signage. Maybe it's on the Wayfinder in the mall, kiosks, that kind of thing, right? So you have that, and that's a traditional view of place. In digital, especially if you have an e-com store, um, you it's natural to think of like PLAs, search PLAs, or DPAs, like dynamic product ads, and things like that as advertising. But in fact, they're probably better thought of as place because it's like Wayfair, it's like a signage, like a Wayfinder. It's like your storefront sign. It just happens to be online. So it's more likely to be digital availability, as James Hankins talks about it, um, or physical availability, technically speaking, if you think about your phone being physical and your connection to a store being through a mobile device, than it is actually advertising in a traditional sense.
How do you measure this? You get a lot of data. We love the
Hmm.
data. We are not lacking for data. We have tons of it.
Yeah,
We're trying to get this show to focus on measurement. So talk about
sure.
measuring the impact of marketing at the level of 4Ps without being overwhelmed by
Yeah,
data, and sort of just how do you measure impacts across those things now that we've
yeah.
sort of unpacked them?
I would say, well, a quick story. When I first started the data science team at a company I was at, we were going around looking for sources of data to be able to answer some of the questions like, did this campaign work? Right?
Right.
Seems like a very mundane kind of question,
Right.
yet get asked all the time. But in order to solve, to fill in the dots of did it work, I ended up that I had to find 22 different data sources that could provide a piece of the picture. And only a few of them were in the marketing department. Some of them were in operations, some of them were in the buying teams, some of them were in HR. So, like there's data that was all over the business that really was helpful in helping us understand whether it worked and how we could replicate it and do it better the next time. So, there is a ton of data, and I feel like it's the unfortunate thing is that we're like Facebook and Google are obviously the big players in the digital space. You could throw Amazon into that bucket too, but they don't know your business plan. They just know their business plan, and they're giving you tons of data to be able to measure things that help you partially, but a lot about showing the value of their platforms. For marketers thinking about like how to avoid getting overwhelmed in the data, I think it's really thinking about the 4 Ps is a way to do that because there is a ton of data that is available at your fingertips on digital platforms, but because it's available doesn't mean it's useful. So if you think about 4 Ps in terms of like your cash flow, your price elasticity, your market penetration, you mentioned share of search. That's like probably a early stage brand metric, let's call it.
Mhm.
Inventory turnover, things like that. Like a lot of financial metrics. Really, I would suggest probably the best thing to do is talk to the CFO and figure out what things they care about, and then figure out how you can measure those, like measure progress against those kinds of things.
Here's a time to just kind of break it down into a single piece of advice. Say
Mm,
you're hearing a marketer discussing the 4 Ps in a coffee shop and they're frustrated.
sure.
What's your oh by the way, one line of advice for them to help them orient and align better with the 4 Ps?
Yeah, it's also a really good question. It's hard to, I mean, like the context of the conversation would be great, and you may have different pieces of advice for different people depending on the context. But
No, no, right.
I probably go back to the thing I said earlier, which is, yeah, I mean, stop looking to Google or insert Facebook, social media platform, whatever platform here. Like stop looking at those channels for answers because they don't have them. They just have data that they have. So really like thinking about the business through the four P's is really valuable because marketers can then look at their business through like the mechanisms that drive their business forward. So things like market penetration, inventory turnover, price elasticity, cash flow, like those kinds of things matter to a business and the livelihood of a business. And none of the platforms like Google, Facebook, Amazon are going to tell you all those things.
Mm.
So you have to kind of look at the four Ps, in my opinion, to really have a complete understanding of really what kinds of metrics are really important.
Okay, now here I've heard that there's 5 Ps. Someone said there's 7 Ps. I heard there's
Yeah.
like 29 Ps.
Yeah.
What's up with that? What's your thoughts just real quick on the proliferation of Ps? Too many Ps?
I think, you know what? It's so hard because like marketers, I think we're our own worst enemies, I think, in a lot of ways, because we all believe in differentiation and we all come up with the newest, latest, greatest thing, like the four Ps, the 5 Ps, the 7 As, the 5 Qs, like
go down the alphabet.
Yeah, it just gets to a point where, the golden circle is Simon Sinek, or like there's so many things that are out there, like Maslow's hierarchy of need. Like there's so many things, and really a lot of it is just junk and confusing. I think if we go to those things that haven't changed, like the four Ps have been around for 60 years, they're still relevant. They're still really good. They're a good way to look at the business in terms of what it produces and delivers. I think we should stop reinventing a lot of things, because it's not helpful. Like we often will get into arguments with each other, and then the rest of the boardroom will sit around and like just watch the shit show happen in front of them
because I'm on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey.
Yeah.
And you're stuck in a funnel somewhere.
Like I think we need to learn to speak business better than we need to learn how to speak marketing.
So speaking about marketing, you speak to some of the industry's best and brightest in your podcast. Seriously great guests on the Acast. If you could look back on the year, or the 3 top themes or issues, on the shows that you've made recently, what are those top 3 themes or issues that you're seeing with your guests as we head into 2022?
There's so many like really interesting things that I've been lucky enough to talk to a lot of people, and
totally.
So many great nuggets. I would say the first thing that jumps into my mind is from Mark Ritson talking about the discipline of marketing. It's really important, and I think this is why it's valuable to go back to things like the 4 Ps, because the 4 Ps themselves aren't strategy, like price, place, product, promotion. They're an executional element of the strategic work you do at the beginning. So market orientation, starting there, understanding what the lay of the land looks like, and doing a proper segmentation, deciding and choosing, and there's tons of stuff from Roger Martin I think is great. Right. Choosing who your target markets are, which places you're going to play in, how you're going to win. Then you get to positioning. And then from there, then you get into your price, product, place, promotion, right? And so I think that discipline is really important, and it has to go in that order, because if you skip it, you're screwed. You end up like just flailing, and you're not sure why it's not working. You're not sure why it's failing, because you never had a great plan to begin with. So I think that's a really good one.
Right.
I would say the second one that really sticks out for me, I talked to Jenny Romanek.
Yes. Distinctive assets.
Yeah. So and distinctive assets, I think, is such an important part. But we talked a lot about memory and how that works. And the natural state of memory is to decay. Like I forget birthdays. I don't mean to, but I forget birthdays. And it happens to all of us. And so that's with people I care about and love. So, for brands to have this idea that every customer is gonna like, the goal is to have every customer love me is really a, a weird misaligned goal. I think the goal really is to get them to remember you at all, and in specific buying situations. So that's the caveat there. And so that idea of memory and linking a brand to particular category entry points is a really,
Right.
really big thing.
Love that.
And then, I mean, there's a whole bunch of others. Like, there's a conversation I had with about distinctive assets with Paul Durbin, and he's the CMO for National Lottery. I mean, what they've done with the National Lottery is so fascinating as a case study. Like, if anybody's interested, it's like Jenny's work come to life in this campaign that they have and building out these assets. It's pretty fascinating.
And with the National Lottery, where in which
Ireland,
love it.
yeah, it's super interesting, really fascinating what they're doing. And then I would say the third thing is really, I keep coming back to this one. There's a guy I talked to named Manoj Jasra, and he's the CMO of I forget the Northland Properties. I think they're part owners, or they are owners of like Dallas North Stars, but then they've got
Oh wow.
restaurants and then some vacation resort properties and stuff like that.
Sure.
What the big thing that he talked about was momentum. And I think that's really underrated because we all want to see like this knock it out of the park, giant home run win every time. And more and more, especially through COVID, we all have kind of gone through this grind of it. And sometimes like just having momentum is a win. It's hard getting stuff done sometimes, especially if you're trying to align all these different peoples and stakeholders and opinions and so on and so forth.
Mm.
So I really love the idea of building momentum. I don't know exactly how you measure that for every business, but it's just probably a feeling in some cases, and in some cases it's just seeing progress through the KPIs you're tracking.
So we've mentioned your podcast a few times, Acast, which I'm sure people can find on all the usual podcast platforms, but how else can people find you online and learn more about you, Marc?
Yeah, well, LinkedIn is where I'm most active. I mean, you can put my name into Marc Binkley into Google, something will come up. And then the company I'm at is called Stees, and for anyone that's interested, we're a boutique agency that does sort of full service, like research, strategy, creative, and then media buying. And we're specifically looking at B2B tech as a big area for us in this year.
Cheese or chocolate?
Okay, here we go. Cheese or chocolate?
Cheese.
Okay. Grease the country or Grease the movie?
Oh, I've never been to Greece, the country, but I'm so interested in going. I'll go with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Over easy or scrambled?
Oh, always over easy.
Okay. All right. Cashmere or silk?
Oh, I'd have to go with cashmere for right now, I would say. It's so cold here.
It's the season.
Yeah.
Eddie Izzard or a pet lizard?
Oh, I'll go with a pet lizard. I don't know why. I'll go with the pet lizard.
You got the heat lamp. Paper or plastic?
Paper.
Okay. Done.
Well, thanks so much. This was fun.
What Gets Measured is a NinjaCat podcast. Please rate and review the show wherever you find your podcasts. Share this episode on social and visit us on the web at ninjacat.io.